Is college football broken? Well, we're going to talk about how we would fix it as Georgia fans here at the Nitro Show. I'm Burl.
And I'm Streit.
And we're talking about how we're going to fix college football.
Yeah, so how would we fix college football? Well, when we sat down to ask ourselves that question, first we had a few goals in mind. Number one, we want to maintain the ability to have rivalries. Rivalries are one of the unique things that makes college football special. There's a reason that Georgia-Florida is an awesome game and it takes place in Jacksonville every year. There's a reason that Alabama and Auburn fans hate each other 99% of the year. There's a reason that the Michigan and Ohio State fans can't stand to be in the same room. Rivalries are important, and we wanted to make sure that those can stay going forward. Number two, we wanted to help stabilize the transfer portal window. As Kirby Smart mentioned a few weeks ago, it's one of the biggest questions facing college football. When can players transfer? How often they transfer? It's just important going forward for coaches to be able to stabilize and know who's going to be on their team year to year.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait to talk about that.
Number three, wanted to re-emphasize the regular season. The focus of college football has become the playoff. That's all anybody talks about from the beginning of the season. All these, where they stand in the playoff rankings, who's going to make the playoffs, all this. College football used to be important to the regular season, and we want to get a little bit back to that.
And when teams don't make the playoffs, you have a lot of crappy bowl games where people are sitting out.
Right. Number four that we wanted to kind of help would be to reemphasize conference championships. That's how you play in your conference, and whether it's a championship game or a regular season championship, that means something. Conferences were the lifeblood of college football. They gave us identity and things like that. And in this ever-changing landscape of conferences, we wanted to get a little importance back to conference championships. Once again, be it a conference championship game or something else. Number five, we wanted to place importance on the end of the season. At the end of the year, now it's become, if you're in the playoff, that's great. Everybody's excited. Everybody else, just doesn't care. But what if teams that were at the bottom of the standings had something to play for as well? Well, that's something we want to explore. And then the last thing is, how do we have schools that are smaller have a chance to move up to the upper echelons to compete with the big boys? How does that happen? If they aren't on the same TV contracts or aren't getting the same money, how can they ever compete unless they have crazy donors or something? And so that's one of the things we thought about as well.
The haves and the have-nots.
Absolutely. So how we're going to break this down is we're going to break this down into different sections, different areas that we thought we could make improvements on. I have my ideas, Burl has his ideas, and we're going to present kind of both sides, and then we're going to talk about the pros and the cons of each.
Yeah, and if you like this content, hit the like button on this video. Helps out a lot. Hit the subscribe button. That's what we want more than anything. Hit that subscribe button.
Yep. All right. So the first topic that we are looking to improve is the topic of player movement. Now, player movement encompasses things like transfers, player salaries, and all that jazz. And just to set up front, we're not going back to the days of pure student athletes. NIL, revenue sharing, all that is here to stay. And we understand that, so we're not going to try to change that. So, Burl, what are your first thoughts on player movement?
Well, I think the first thing that I would do would look at the transfer window. Right now, we have two windows, one that falls during the actual playoffs, which is a bad thing. And then you have the one after spring, which the coaches don't really like. So I think we have to tackle that first.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something that they got to get figured out. Apparently, they're still arguing on it right now. I think based on Kirby Smart's comments and what I tend to agree with is the idea that the rosters for your team should be set before spring practice. Because at that time, you're integrating mid-year enrollees to your team and guys transferring. If you can go into spring practice with your roster set, that lets the coaches focus on doing their job of coaching the team and not having to worry about guys transferring after spring practice and into the summer.
I'm not entirely opposed to that, but here's how what I would propose. One transfer window post spring, and The reason I would promote this is players would have to be on the team for a full cycle, full year. So all the way from, fall camp to end of spring. And by the end of spring, players going to know where they stand on the team, whether or not they have a chance of playing or, if they really need to look around. And you can align this with the calendar school year as well. You got spring semester basically when that ends. All right, open the portal, and then you have the summer to go to where you're going to go. Now, on top of that, with the roster limit stuff, I would say that one change that would be made across all of college football is that all teams would have to start their football camps roughly at the same time. Like there'd be an end date that they would have to have their camps done. So just like the NFL. And this would fall before fall camp, in my opinion. So during that summertime, once your fall camp hits, you go through that camp. The coaches make the cuts for whoever's not going to make the team. And now they have an option to transfer to another team in that fall, in the start of fall.
So, but that you're giving them the option to change again, right? That's a second transfer window then, right?
It would be all during the same window. So just one big window. So after spring until the end of camp, you can transfer.
That makes sense. On the flip side, the argument becomes that coaches have become fed up with not understanding what their teams are when they are trying to integrate their new players, because so many players enroll early now, particularly in the stage of NIL and how this revenue sharing is going to be. If you look at how revenue sharing is going to work, the budgets for revenue sharing are going to reset in July each year. And so you're going to already have money allocated to players that are going to be on your team the next year in the spring.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to manage a budget of incoming enrollees and players, you kind of know what you want to have going into your spring practice to kind of set things up. So my idea is if you kept that spring window, you could make it after the championship is over. So it would be a pre-spring, but it might not be what it is now. It's not a December, January timeframe. It's more of a mid-February. The one concern has always been the academic calendar, but let's be honest, these guys are less and less academic based every day. So players that do transfer in that window are just considered exempt for that semester from being in class. Just make an exemption. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Shouldn't be. But that's always been one of the sticking points of like why we couldn't have a playoff for so long. It's like, oh, it's going to interfere with class. Well, these guys aren't even going to class. I mean, let's be real. I think that would be a great solution. One thing that I would change about the whole salary cap and revenue share stuff, I would say instead of doing a salary cap, as part of this, being part of one of these leagues, Power 4, Group of 5 leagues, you are required to sign a contract to play. And I would try to structure it so that all incoming freshman contracts would be 2 years with a player option on the third year. So that gives them a chance to kind of renegotiate, get some more money, or just go somewhere else. And anybody that's third year or greater, they would have essentially a contract that covers their remaining eligibility, but they have a buyout clause in their contract. So if they want to go to another team, they have to buy them out.
Yeah, I think you're already going to see buyouts coming in. They've already kind of addressed that. I don't know if you saw more of the details about the revenue sharing deal, that if players have buyouts in their contract and they leave a team, that the school that they're going to is going to be responsible for that buyout money, and that money will count to the revenue sharing
Yeah.
amount of their salary cap. So I think they are accounting for that, because I think no matter what, in the current situation, I think contracts are somewhat going to be part of it anyway.
Yeah. But to the point about the one big window that I was proposing, this would essentially take care of that, because you're going to have, solid contracts that clearly outline what you can do, what you can't do, and it still benefits the players in the end, and it puts them on a similar level as the coaches, because the argument's always been, well, coaches can leave whenever they want if they get bought out, so why not players? This gives you that.
I like your idea of the 2 years. I thought of something similar. I didn't necessarily say it as contracts, but what I thought it was when you enroll as a player at a high school, whoever you commit to, that first school that you commit to, that you start at, you're committed to them for 2 years. Now, if you get there after the first year and you want to leave, you can leave, but you have to sit out a year. You don't get that free transfer. So that would be the same situation. If you absolutely hate your situation and you know that next year you're going to be there and not start, but then you can transfer and go somewhere else, start practicing with a new team, but you have to sit out.
I was just going to say, I like the idea, but I don't think the days of making players sit out for transfers is ever coming back, even if we had the pin.
Right. I mean, and that could be the case. This is, like I said, this is hypothetical. The idea would be, though, that after that second year, then you can transfer, and everybody gets one free transfer. Wherever they want to go, they can transfer. I want to try to get away from this idea that people can play on 4 and 5 teams while they're in college. I don't like that. And so under this, you have one free transfer. You can transfer wherever you want once. If you want to transfer again after that, you either have to sit out for a year or you can be a graduate. If you have graduated school, you have finished up an undergraduate degree, then that grants you the right to be able to transfer however many times and wherever you want.
So basically how it used to be.
Somewhat, except the graduate rule used to work that you had to transfer to another school that had a major that your current school didn't have. Yeah, screw that. Just let the kid transfer.
I never knew that. That's weird.
Yeah, just transfer. That was the loophole with it. But no, everybody gets a free transfer. This would just be a second transfer. So it's not the same as it was before, where you could only transfer and not sit out once you graduated. Now it's just you can transfer and not sit out. And then if you want to transfer again, which at that point you would already be a senior player, and lots of football players take lots of classes because they enroll early and they stay for summer. Lots of kids graduate in 3.5 years anyway. So at the end of the day, this would incentivize the academic piece, if you want to bring that a little bit back, for kids. And then, prevents just so many of the situations where you've got this kid, Jake Garcia, who's on his 4th team.
Yeah. And I don't know if you want to get into it tonight or not, but then there's the whole like Pavia, situation type players. Like, how does that factor into all this new stuff? I haven't even thought about that.
I mean, to me, COVID's over. The rules to me go back to what they were: 5 years to play 4. No more. And it's really 4.5. So under the old rule, you could redshirt and play 4 games. So you got 5 years to play 4.25 seasons. I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think we need it. I don't think we need kids in college for 5th and 6th years. COVID was a weird thing. That's done. And I think we should just move back.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's an age limit thing. Maybe they go to that. I mean, you'd miss out on some players, like Chris Winkie.
But you've got some situations you'd run into trouble there. I mean, BYU, the kids go on mission for a couple of years.
That's come back.
Point. You've got military kids where they have to do some stuff. I think that would hurt the players.
Yeah. Right? Well, I mean, I'm just thinking about that Pavia situation. He won a court battle saying that his JUCO years don't count now.
Right.
So that would have to be overturned.
Yeah. There have been a couple more of those cases lately. The Tennessee basketball player case, they've shot him down. Guys trying to just straight up get 5th year eligibility.
Oh, well, I also just thought about this. So that case was against the NCAA, right?
It was for, yeah, I think it was for eligibility. Yes.
Okay. So in this new world, NCAA ain't really part of it.
Very true.
So you have your agreements with the leagues that say this is the eligibility to play in our league. So okay, maybe that covers it.
Yeah. I mean, that would just be defined. But like I said, I once again, I want to instill what college football was.
Yeah.
Younger guys learning, learning in the systems that they're in, not changing. I just don't like the idea that guys are on 4 or 5 teams chasing the dollar. They can get money now. They can be paid by the teams directly. They can still get NIL. Let's calm that down and just get back to guys being on the team for at least a couple years before they want to switch.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I like the idea of like just the contract piece and not worrying about a salary cap. Maybe there's a salary cap for freshmen, incoming freshmen, kind of like what you do in the NFL.
I don't know if there's a salary cap, but I think there's going to have to. They're not going to keep giving out the money that they've given out here.
Right, right. I'm looking at the NFL model. So for now they have the rookie salary cap. So you don't have a Sam Bradford type contract that you get stuck with if it's a bust.
I don't know if they can do that until they're actually employees. And even under this rev share, they're technically not employees. So until that changes, and that would be the next step, that would be next evolution. But until that changes, until they fully are employees.
Are NFL players employees?
Yes, they are employees. They get health benefits. They're signed through the league. They have a players union. That's the big thing. They're allowed to unionize. So they are
Yeah,
employees.
you're right. They are. Okay. Yeah, I guess that is the big difference.
Our next topic is a topic of conference alignment. So in recent years, we've seen the conferences, or what were the conferences, change so much. Teams flipping here, flipping there, crazy out of hand, big programs, small programs, big conferences, little conferences. It's just kind of gotten a mess. So I thought it would be easy if we just
Atlantic Coast
restacked.
Conference with a Pacific team.
Yeah. So I thought it would just be easy just to restack the deck in what is Division One, because let's be honest, in this new model, there's not 135 teams that are even remotely prepared to compete for a championship. So maybe it's time we stop worrying about everybody and start worrying about the top.
Can we call it Division One again and not this
That's what I've called it.
FCS bullcrap?
Yes, so that's what I've called it. So under my realignment model, we are forming the 96 school Division One.
D1, baby.
So what this consists of is our 4 major conferences, because they love their identity and they love what they've become and their logos and all that, will remain. SEC, Big Ten, ACC, Big 12. Those are your 4 major conferences. Those conferences are divided into 2 divisions, 8 teams per division. So you have 16 teams in each of the 4 major conferences. That's 64 teams. Each conference underneath it is aligned with what I call a subconference. What is a subconference? A subconference is a Division One conference, but it is the lower teams to that major conference. How do we get teams to be able to move from a subconference to a major conference? We'll touch on that in a little bit later when we discuss the idea of promotion and relegation. So, Burl, any thoughts on my idea for 96 school Division One?
It's definitely cleaner because I can never remember like how many schools are are actually playing football because I think it changes from year to year sometimes.
It does. There's always new schools being added. I think
Yeah.
Sacramento State is trying to move up, and they just got voted down the other day.
Yeah, so I like that idea, and I like where you're going with the promotion relegation stuff.
Okay. So we will get to that in a minute. But before we get to that, the next topic is, once we have realigned these conferences, into 96 schools of Division One. How do we create a schedule that emphasizes conferences, that keeps rivalries, that also allows for cool matchups, and makes the season interesting throughout? So here's my idea for a uniform scheduling for all the teams of the major conferences. Every school plays 7 games against their division rivals. So those are the 7 schools in your division, you play them. That's your first 7 games. You have 2 games each year against the cross division within your conference. Those rotate. So that puts you at 9 conference games, 7 division, 2 cross division. You have 1 game per year against a team from your sub-conference. So there's that 8-team sub-conference below. That becomes your de facto mid-major game, okay? And then you have 2 games of your discretion. Now, the rules on these are they must be against major conference teams. So we are going to essentially an 11-game schedule against major conference teams. This is going to bulk up the regular season a lot, okay? But everybody's doing it.
Yeah, that would add a lot more excitement, especially if you're forced to actually play 2 major out-of-conference games.
Right. So there's a couple rules here, a couple caveats. Number 1, this will allow for current non-conference rivals that have, rivals that aren't in their conference to maintain their rivalries. So Georgia can play Georgia Tech every year, things like that. The other caveat with those 2 games against major conference teams is it can be in your own conference. It can be a non-conference game within your own conference. Why do you do that? The main reason is because with these divisions, sometimes you have a rival that you like to play every year that's not in your division. Some years they might be on your schedule as part of that 2-team rotation, but some years they might not. So to be able to give the flexibility to maintain that, you can schedule conference games that do not actually count as conference games, essentially, to maintain rivalries.
That makes a lot of sense. Because I'm trying to think about a good example in the old 12-team SEC.
I mean,
how that would work.
Alabama and Tennessee, right?
Yeah,
if they're not in the same, if they're not in the same division, but you wanted to keep playing that, or Georgia Auburn, if they don't end up in the same, in the same division, but you wanted to keep that going, well, every 4 years or so they would have that game on the conference schedule. But then in those other years, if they want to schedule it as their, rivalry game, it's a major conference, so it fits in that last thing, and they can play the game.
I like it. That captures the essence of college football, because it's all about rivalries. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. You want to see your team against your biggest rivals and, enjoy that victory, or go cry in the corner when you lose.
Right. And it just gives flexibility, right? Like, if for whatever reason, say, the Georgia Tech game, Georgia Tech hadn't been playing very good. Well, we didn't want to schedule them this year, so we didn't.
Or, Georgia Tech gets relegated.
That too. So that's the next piece that I want to touch on.
Good segue, huh?
That was a great segue. So under this system now, we have our 4 major conferences, 16 teams, and we have those sub-conferences. And so the idea behind the sub-conferences is it's made up of 8 schools. And the idea is that each year there is a playoff at the end of the year within the teams that are up for both promotion and relegation. Okay. Every year there's going to be 2 teams that get promoted up and 2 teams get promoted down. When you are promoted up, you get a 1-year exemption from being eligible to be promoted down again. So we're not going to have teams that go up and then go back down, up, down, up, down, up, down. You go up, you get at least 1 year to try to write yourself in the major conference. So how promotion works is the winner of the sub-conference is automatically promoted. So based on their conference record, within their sub-conference, they're promoted up. The teams that finish second and third, they have a play-in game, a promotion game. And the winner of that game also gets promoted. On the demotion end, you're fighting for it a little bit more, right? So we're not going to have anybody just automatically demoted. The bottom 4 schools, based on conference records, and it doesn't matter what division you're from. It's just the bottom 4 schools in your conference. They
Play a loser leaves town game.
essentially, yes. So they based on their records, the fourth worst team plays the worst team, and the third worst team plays the second worst team. Losers get relegated, winners go up.
Stay.
Oh, yeah. And beyond that, how do teams get into the sub-conference if they are these smaller schools that aren't part of this 96 school? I haven't figured that out yet. You could always do something like English soccer where you've got these tiers and levels, but I'm not going to figure that out here tonight.
Yeah, two levels is plenty for a Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah. So that's my idea for promotion relegation. What do you think?
I am a big proponent of the promotion relegation system. I think it's been needed in college football for years, and we've always talked about this throughout the years. It'd be like, oh, it'd be so great because there's so many teams, and most of them have no shot whatsoever of making the playoff or competing for a national title, let alone a conference championship. So I like it because it does make the regular season matter a lot, and a lot for everybody. It's not just a lot for the national championship outcome.
It gives them something to play for at the end of the year.
Yeah, and
the whole idea in that promotion game, why that winner of the sub-conference gets a bye, that's how it works in English soccer, right? How they have at their lowest levels. The winner doesn't have to go to a playoff. You get rewarded for the regular season, and it's left to the other people to battle it out. So that just gives them one more game to play for. They can't take the season because they know, oh, well, here we are stuck in the sub-conference. We don't have to play for anything because as it is now, being in the major conference, you get more money. And how do you build your program and get higher up? You build your money. So if you get promoted and we give them that year, so essentially you get promoted, you're going to get 2 years at that major level, 2 years of getting more money than you would in the lower level. That will give you a chance to help build your program.
So I've been trying to think about like how you could make bowl games a little more interesting, and maybe these relegation promotion games are played at bowl games.
Absolutely.
So then they're actually playing for something.
Right. You could do that. Absolutely. You have 2 games in each conference. So you've got 4 conferences. So that's 8 games. And then you've got the 4 subs. So that's 12 games, right? 12 games you could add to your schedule right there.
That would be cool. That would make the Pop-Tarts Bowl even more exciting.
Right. So that's the promotion relegation in the lower level. And now I've talked about how I would build out the conferences. So the next topic is the topic that's on everybody's mind anyway in the college football world. What does a playoff look like? Now, my system is based on my realignment, but I know that you also wrote up yours based on not a radical realignment. So why don't you talk a little bit about your playoff system first?
Sure. So my take would be, I'm okay with the current alignment of conferences. Even though you've got some West Coast teams playing on the East Coast and other conferences that can't count, but I would keep the 4 conferences, the main Power 4, and your group of 5. But I would also shrink the playoff from 12 to 8 teams. So what that would give you with no conference championship game, that we would do away with the conference championship game because that's just a game that's going to hurt your chances in the long run, whether you win or lose. It does nobody any good, and it's just a money grab. So I'm getting rid of the conference championship game. Going to 8 team playoff. So all of your regular season conference champions make the playoff. Easy peasy. Then after that, you have your number 2 and 3 teams play for eligibility to get in the playoff. And the teams that win those, the top 4 ranked teams out of those group of teams would make it into the playoff. So, and then that would give you your 8. Or is that 9?
No, that would give you your 4 regular season champions, and then you would have essentially your runner-ups for those conference eligible plus your G5. But that would mean at most you would only have 2 teams from each conference.
Okay, so actually it'd be your 5. So you have your conference champions plus your G5, and then 3 other at-large teams that win their playoff eligibility games.
Okay.
And so your top ranked ones out of that group that won make it into the playoffs. So that adds some even more excitement for those final teams earning their way in, which I think would be awesome. And yeah, that's what I would do.
Okay. Yeah, I like that if you're cutting down the playoffs. Unfortunately, I just don't foresee any way that they're going to go back down to 8.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%.
So with that in mind, with not going back down to 8 and the new structure I had, I thought going to 16 teams actually makes logical sense. But once again, I want to reignite what it means to be a conference champion. I want that to be important. What does that mean? At the end of the day, the only teams that are in the final 4 are the 4 major conference champions. The playoffs start before that. So how does that work? 4 teams from each conference make the playoffs. Okay. And it's treated a lot like the NFL. So the division winners are automatically eligible. But then after that, it's just the next 3 highest ranked teams based on their conference records. So it doesn't have to be 2 teams from Division A and 2 teams from Division B. It could be 1 from Division A and 3 from Division B. Okay. The first round, and that's the interconference playoff games that are played on campus. So you have the number 1 seed versus the number 4 seed and the number 2 versus the number 3. Winners of those games meet the next week in the second round. That's the conference championship games. Those will be played at the traditional conference championship game sites. So Atlanta, Indy, Dallas, and Charlotte. Those will be the hosts of those games. The winners of those games are the conference champions, and those are the 4 teams that make it to the college football playoff semifinals. And obviously the semifinals will take place at the New Year's 6 bowl games, that rotation of schedules. So try not to have a team playing in Atlanta twice, but you may. Georgia did a few years ago. It's not that big a deal.
That works out for us.
The 4 winners that are in those, the 4 conference champions are reseeded before that game. And that's how you do 1, 4, so on. And then the winners of those play in the championship. So what it works out to is a 16-team playoff. It's a 4-week playoff. To win a championship, you have to play 16 games.
I got to say, I like your plan better than mine.
but mine works because of the conference realignment, because of the equal out of the divisions and the conferences.
Yeah, with all the other stuff that you had put forth, like then that makes sense,
right?
Because without the promotion, relegation, and you know the realignment, the playoff kind of kills the rest of the regular season.
Right. And right now the Big Ten and the SEC are so much stronger than everybody else.
Yeah.
Having 4 teams from the Big 12 doesn't make sense. But if you've realigned teams, you've shifted some of those around, they're back to more regional rivalries and things like that within the conferences. Then you get back to, you diversify the money and things like that. Then it makes a little more sense.
I like it.
And once again, this is also important because when you've realigned the conference, you've realigned the schedules. Everybody's playing the same amount of in-conference games, rivalry games, D1 games. Everything's the same. So everybody has faced a similar, yes, the schedules won't be same year to year because the teams won't be the same, but at least they are under the same guys. They're under the same ideals.
Yeah, same format. So you won't have the Big Ten complaining that the SEC doesn't play 9 conference games.
Correct. Next thing I want to address, which was a hot topic a few months ago, coming out of spring practice and everything, was the idea of spring games. I think you should allow exhibition spring games. I don't see the problem with doing it. Do they need to be big time team matchups? Not necessarily. If you
Yes.
really
No,
want
I'm
to,
just kidding.
if you really want to, but if you really want to exhibit your team, well, as part of this new structure, we'd be doing away with FCS games, right? We'd be doing
You
away
mean
with,
Division 2 games?
yeah, yeah. You'd be doing away with even a lot of games that used to be, group of 5 games. And a lot of those group of 5 teams in FCS schools currently need those football games right now because those help pay for their programs. And under this revenue sharing stuff and everything else, they're going to be even more dire straits in need of money. So why don't we use the spring games to do that? Teams can host. Georgia, could host a smaller school, have them come to Athens, charge tickets, sell the game, put the game on TV, you know, and pay them. And Georgia's not going to roll up there and play their toughest guys, their starters the whole game. They're going to rotate and everything, but it's a little bit more competitive. And just if they lose, they lose. So who cares? It's like it's not a real game, but it gives those teams a chance to come in, make some money. It gives, the fans a little bit more to keep that sense of the games moving on in the spring. And if you implemented my transfer window idea, your team would be set at that spring game as well. So you would really have a good idea of who's going to be on your team.
Yeah, I like spring games. I would love to see them stick around. Um, if for nothing else, just the tradition of it in football. I mean, because going back, even when you go back to high school, like you have spring practice, you got a little spring game at the end. It's nice. It's really a reward for the players. They can go out and showcase the stuff that they've been working on for the past few weeks. So I'm a big proponent of keeping spring games.
Yeah. And like I said, it's something that some coaches, Dion was pushing for. Other guys are pushing for it. So why not give the fans something to cheer about in the spring?
Yeah,
The last,
it's better than the UFL.
yeah. The last area that I wanted to just touch on a few things on was some pace of play and some general rules changes that I think would help the game and particularly the fan watchability of the game. Major League Baseball a couple years ago implemented radical changes, implementing the pitching clock to help speed up the play of game. And before they implemented that, a couple years ago, 60% of Major League Baseball games were 3 hours or more. They were facing declining television ratings, declining in-person attendance. They implemented the pitching clock. They implemented the larger bases and a couple of other things, banning the shift. Now, Major League Baseball, only 15% of games go over 3 hours. Their attendance is up. Their television audience viewership is way up. And it's just made for a better experience.
That was one of the best changes, like rule changes in all of sports that I've ever seen. I mean, a lot of times you get a rule change and you're like, this is dumb, but these are great changes.
It has saved baseball.
It really
Baseball
has.
with young people was a dying audience. Baseball was seen as an old person's game. The numbers prove it out. Young people are tuning into baseball. College baseball is doing great numbers as well.
Well, I mean,
with the College World Series.
Just looking at the Braves, like, they haven't really been that great the past 2 years, but they sell out almost every night.
Right. Because it's easy when you go to a game and you can go home in 3 hours.
Yeah.
So
well,
college
they
football
also made it like this whole experience around it too, but that's different. Yeah.
Yeah. But college football has had a problem that the NFL doesn't really have. The NFL runs a tight ship. Their games really go 3, maybe 3.5 hours. But you go to most college football games, especially any ones that are on ESPN or CBS. You're gonna be there for 3.5 to 4 hours every game. And it makes it tough, particularly with the schedule changing where you're having more night games for fans to go and stay. So my thought was that let's make some changes to help speed that along. Number one, instant replays, which always seem to take forever. If they call for a replay, it's limited to 90 seconds. That should give those referees enough time. If they can't make a decision in 90 seconds, the rule stands. Just go on with it. Exception
Yeah,
would be a coach's challenge. Coaches should get a couple of challenges per game that are spent a little more time on.
I'd
But
say
other than that,
that. I would say
yeah,
that, and just have someone in the booth make the call.
right.
Like
Have a replay official in the booth.
having the ref like run to the side of the field to watch it on some crappy, you know, tablet type screen. It's stupid. Like just get the call from someone who's sitting at a computer screen and can see everything very clearly. I mean, that will speed it up exponentially.
Yep. So that's one. Number two, let's fix targeting. People like big hits
Please.
in college football. People like big hits in college football. Fans like it. Now, every time there's even a remotely hard hit, targeting, they got to review it. They got to check it out. And then, yes, he kind of lowered his head, so he's thrown out of the game. Man, in the NFL, they don't kick you out for a targeting penalty. They don't even call it targeting. They call it unnecessary roughness. We need to get back to it. We need to get where we still protect the players. Yes, we don't need to have them taking headshots, but we need it to be more like college basketball where they can take a look at the foul and determine if the intent was, yes, this guy was purposely trying to hurt somebody, or, oh, in the split second he had to make the decision, the player catching the ball lowered his head, and even though the defender had lowered his shoulder, it still hit his head. It wasn't on purpose. By rule, it's still a penalty, but you don't need to eject the guy.
Yeah.
So let's go to two types of fouls for targeting: flagrant one, flagrant two. Flagrant one, it's a penalty. Flagrant two, you eject the kid, and that's it. It doesn't have to be this big, debate. It's just if it clearly looks like the kid was just making a play, then just give him the penalty and move on.
Yeah. I would like to see targeting kind of repealed a little bit because I do miss the big hits. I'm all for player safety and everything, but we've legislated a very big part of the game out that was a big part of the appeal for football. I mean, we've been talking about, greatest players in the 2000s for Georgia, and a lot of the players that we talk about on the defense are from the days of big hits. I mean, I miss the days of Monday Night Countdown. You got jacked up. That was great.
Right. I mean, even look at it this way. So in the last couple of years, we've had a couple of plays that ended up not being called targeting, but took forever to figure it out. So we look at the Ohio State game, the Javon Bullard hit on Marvin Harrison at the back of the end zone, and then we look in the SEC championship last year when Gunnar Stockton took that hit, and it looked for sure like it was targeting, and they overturned it and they didn't call it.
Yeah.
Like that's a situation. Yes, we still need to review those calls, but if they can look at that situation like the Gunnar Stockton and they change the rules where clearly that guy came up and hit him hard and he was, like maybe that should be a penalty. I don't know, but just define the rules better. Go to these flagrant 1s and 2 and move on. Don't make it such a huge debate because right now, every time there's one of these penalties called, they take forever because they know they might be kicking a kid out.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, let someone in the booth make the call. I mean, there is no reason for anybody on the field to be watching a replay on a freaking tablet screen.
Right. Third rule that I'd like to see change, and I know they've been discussing this, but this is about faking injuries. If a player gets hurt and they have to have a trainer come out and take them off the field, they're out for that series. End of story. If you're hurt enough to have to leave the game, you're hurt enough to not play in that series again. That's
or if you get caught faking an injury.
Right. But I mean, in this case, like, okay, your punishment is that you're off, right? So the only way you could come back on is if your team takes a timeout, which is what you would have to do to stop the other team anyway. So I think that would help a little bit too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to these rules getting in place, the faking injury rules, because that was so annoying last year. I mean, there were so many games where
Ole Miss.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty bad last year.
Yeah. So those are rules I thought of. You got any ideas of any rules you think would help? Pace of play, speed the game up?
Uh, just make rules where there's bigger hits.
I like the rules they put in a couple years ago about the clock changes, where it's no longer clock stops on the first down, more like the NFL clock, running clock, a little bit better. I like that. That's helped a little bit, but they still got a ways to go.
I think we've got some great ideas here. I really love what you put together as a whole. Streit, you did a great job with that, making everything kind of come together. So props to you for that. And if you made it this far, like the video, subscribe, tell a friend, check us out on the socials, anywhere you get your podcast. And we appreciate you. And until next time, I'm Burl.
And I'm Streit.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.